Good morning and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is the place where we talk about all things writing, including by writers and for writers. And we're really glad you're with us today, either live or on the replay. We have a very special program with you with a very special guest. I'm your co-host, Jean Wise. We have Johnny Alexander, our other co-host, and our third co-host, Bethany Jett. And I'm going to turn it over to Bethany right away to introduce our special guest and tell what we're going to talk about today. So go for it, Bethany.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to have my business partner and agent, Cyle Young, back with us. He's been on Writers Chat before, and we have a lot of things that are happening in serious writer world, including a brand new course that we're offering for $10 for the next 3 days. So what we wanted to do is it's a $10 course. Did I say free? What we want to do is go ahead and give you guys a little bit, like a taste of what's going on in that course, and talk about pros and cons of self-publishing and traditional publishing, because so many authors are doing both, and there's reasons to do both, and there's good and bad to both. So I'm going to turn over to Cyle. What we decided on a loose outline would be to go ahead and share the difference between a writer and an author, which is one of the trade secrets and best practices in the course. We're going to talk a little bit about the lingo of the writing and publishing world, and then jump into self-publishing and traditional publishing. So please, if you've got questions or have topics you want talked about during this one, go ahead and get them in the chat. So Cyle, I'm going to let you introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll jump right into the taste of your writer and author class.
Okay. Well, I am Cyle Young. I'm a literary agent with Heartline Literary Agency, and I have about 100 clients, and give or take. And it's been fun to see and them grow in the industry and get published. And right now, we're working on about 12 contracts. Right now, this week and last, and over the last few weeks, actually, as contracts can take a while to get from the first offer through completion. And so it gets crazy, but it's been really good. It's been really fun to be working with these authors that are my clients. So I feel quite blessed at that. And so with everything else that's going on with that, we're also launching with Bethany, we're launching Serious Writer, which is seriouswiswriter.com, and then our kind of subsidiary program, which is Serious Writer Academy, which is essentially a writer's institute. That will have great instruction from amazing writers such as Jean and Johnny and Bethany, myself, and some others. We'll have best-selling writers, award-winning writers, and it kind of leads us into the conversation. What is the difference between a writer and an author? And we kind of talk about that in one of the classes that Beth and I did together, which was the 21 kind of trade secrets and best practices. We have a class on what is the difference between being a writer and author, because those words can often be used interchangeably. And I think back to my college days when I was in logic class, and every author is a writer, but not every writer is an author kind of deal. And so you look at logically how the words apply. And really, writer is a broad term that includes anybody who writes. That could be journalists, it could be someone who writes magazine articles, devotionals, writes poetry, like they're all writers. But an author is really a published book length, someone who publishes a book length work, more importantly, maybe like a novel or a novella, but is generally published. And we're going to get it deeper into the conversation of what does publish mean, because that's always the next question. And so that's kind of where my opinion comes from. But what that looks like when you call yourself an author, it generally means that you have been published by one of the different publishing methods. Being a writer is anyone who writes, and you can be a professional writer and you can be a professional author, and they're just different, and they're just different segments of an industry. And so although everybody who wants to write a novel wants to really be a published author, we would consider a published author who writes a novel a novelist. So there's another category. So, and not all novelists are authors, but not all authors are novelists, kind of the same thing. So and that's kind of how it works. But when I look at publishing, there's three different parts of publishing. There's traditional publishing, there's independent publishing, and then there's self-publishing. And then there's actually a fourth one we call hybrid publishing, which is kind of between independent and traditional mixed with self-publishing. And so I really believe as an agent that anyone who has published either by traditional or independent or self-publishing best practices is a published author. I don't believe every self-published author should be considered an author, because there are ways to do self-publishing and ways to do it very well. And some people do it very well and very successfully. And I'm friends with a lot of them, and they are amazing authors. But if you just take something in its first draft format and put it on the internet, you are not a published author because it's not good writing. It's not something that you should be putting out there. But if you take the time to craft an amazing book, just like you would try to do, and sell it to an independent publisher or a traditional publisher, and then you go through the process of hiring the cover artist and acquiring editors who help you then take your work to even a higher level, and then you publish it, you've really operated as your own publisher. And I believe that's when a self-published author can really consider themselves to be an author and not just a writer who puts it out there for the world. And so that's what I would say is the difference. And I've seen a lot of self-published writers. I've seen a lot of independent published writers, and I've seen a lot of traditional published writers, and I work with them. And so ultimately, I've really determined my opinion about what it means to be a published author over working with individuals who do well in all those regards and have taken the time to invest in it. So I hope that answers some of your question on that.
Okay. Did Kyle say there was a difference between an indie author and a self-published author, or did he use indie in his publishing categories?
Yes, indie is one of my categories. So traditional would be, we would tend to believe that traditional would be, in the general market sense, would be one of your 5 big houses. So you'd have like Penguin Random House, you'd have Hachette, you'd have all these different companies who own everything. And that would be considered traditional publishing at the highest level. And then you have a lot of companies who are traditional publishers. And there's different sizes of traditional publishers. So a traditional publisher offers a contract. You don't have to pay anything. And they're going to handle they're going to take your book and invest thousands of dollars in your book. Some companies will invest $70,000 to get your book to print. And so they're going to pay, and you don't have to pay anything. There's no requirement from you. They benefit solely by making money on your book, and you benefit too. That's kind of traditional. Independent publishers and those books are going to be made available to bookstores and those type of things. Independent publisher is very similar to that category, except that they might be ebook only or ebook first formats. And so that would be a category where if your book is only made available by a publisher who they pay for the cover art, they pay for the editing, but they don't actually put it in a paperback or a hardback version, we would kind of put them in an independent publisher category. And then self-publish is when you take care of everything and you do it all yourself, and you get it out there. There's one category that kind of floats in between all this. It's called hybrid, and that's where you pay somebody to publish your book. So it's kind of like you're self-publishing, but you're working with maybe an indie publisher, and so you're doing it together with them, and it's a benefit to both. Hybrid can be good, but I would say for me, 80% of all hybrid companies I've seen are scams. But there are I have some really great friends who work at those hybrid companies. They put out a great product, and some of those books have made New York Times bestseller list. So if you're going to go the hybrid route, you really got to know and investigate the company that you're going to be working with, because you can get ripped off very easily.
That's a different definition of hybrid for me. I always thought hybrid was somebody that did both some traditional and some self-publishing. So that's kind of good to know. That clarifies it for me.
Yeah, you can be a hybrid author, and so a hybrid author would be an author who does both. But in hybrid publishing, it's gonna be kind of that combined.
Got it. But I can still be a hybrid author, because I am a hybrid author. I've done both traditional and self-publishing, so I am using that terminology correctly then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we jump into terminology then? So I've got a list of different terms for things. So this was actually one of Kyle's classes. I'm gonna let you kind of jump on some of the things that you probably get a lot of questions on, or that people don't seem to think. I mean, it's like in the Christian world, we use terms all the time that make no sense to anyone who's not part of like church life. And so sometimes writing world is like that too, where you're talking to someone who's not in the industry and you say things and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So what are some of those things?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the biggest one that always weirds people out, they don't understand, is floating body parts. And with learning the lingo is important, because if you don't know what people are talking about, then you're confused. And I'm gonna be honest, I mean, when I was sitting in my first writers conferences, they would say stuff, and I was like, I have no idea what that means. But luckily we got Google, and you can go search it, and you can figure out what it means. So don't feel ashamed or embarrassed if you don't know what it means. And I've just learned it's easier to ask than sit there for an entire session and say, I have no idea what that means. But floating body parts, people don't necessarily know what it means. But I'll give you some examples. Her eyes rolled across the room. So like you don't actually, that's like what you're saying is she took her eyes out and she rolled them across the room. Or in a kind of romance setting, his eyes slid down her dress. What you're actually saying is horror, because it means your eyes took down the dress. So I mean, there's different ways to think about what are floating body parts. I see this one a lot. His jaw dropped to the floor. No one's jaw is that big. And so it is essentially that your body part becomes its own entity, living, breathing entity, and does actions. I read one recently where it was her eyebrows pulled together, like meaning like her eyebrows pulled together. But what it means, I'm thinking her eyebrows are like, what are they pulling together? Does she have something attached to her forehead and she's pulling with her eyebrows? And there's others, like his eyebrows hike to his hairline. Your eyebrows can't hike. And so it's giving these kind of human personification, these features to body parts that can't exist. And so they essentially float in space all by themselves, and they're disconnected from the person that they're supposed to be connected to. And so those are what floating body parts are. But if you don't understand those, and someone marks floating body parts, we use these a lot when we're speaking, so we don't think about it. But they actually are impossible for our bodies to do. And so there's ways to change them, but that's always a fun one for me. I love finding them because it's just humorous to think about what people are actually saying and how morbid, and it's usually really morbid every time you find them, because your body can't physically do some of those things. But so that's one. Other ones are like show don't tell. People always say they understand what it means, but when I have people edit for showing and telling, and they come back, they don't understand what it means because they didn't fix it. And it took me about 4 years to really get show versus tell. And I would have people tell me every time. I say, well, I get it. And then I would go and try to fix it. And I wasn't fixing it because I truly didn't understand. I understood the terminology, what they were trying to explain, but I didn't know really how to see it or fix it in my writing. So I truly didn't understand until one day it just kind of clicked. And actually for me, it was editing countless people's manuscripts, and that made sense to me because I saw it in other people's writing. And now it's much easier to find in my writing. So show, don't tell. Other words I know that come up when people say them. I was recently at a conference talking about the difference between a pantser and a plotter. And so, we think of plotter, and that would be like a surveyor who plots, property on a map, for the government. In kind of writing sense, a plotter is someone who plots their book before they write it, and a pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants. But if you don't know what they're talking about, you may associate some other kind of ideas or thoughts or actions to those words. And so we have a lot of these words that are unique to the writing industry that essentially they're hard to find anywhere else in the writing world, outside the writing world.
Does anyone else have any other words that they're wondering about or want to have a little bit more idea what they might mean? I've also heard of plantser, which is kind of a combination of a plotter and a pantser.
Haven't you tried both?
Oh yes, I do both. I have my natural way and I have the way forced on me. But I see the benefit. I mean, I'm glad I've done both, and I see the benefits of doing it both ways too. So, yeah.
Kyle, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you were saying talking or floating body parts, I immediately went to video terminology about the talking heads. We've been talking about that with our videos.
Right.
Like you can do the slides, or you can be the talking heads, which is what we are right now.
Yeah.
Kyle has about 14 minutes left too, so this is a shorter one time frame with him. So So I want to make sure we get all the questions in for you guys who are live with us. And then go ahead, Jean.
Well, I was just going to ask, you know, I find it encouraging a little bit when you talked about showing, not telling, because that's a skill. To me, that's almost a lifelong skill as writers that we need to work on. And then, so I find that encouraging that somebody like you see that also, that it's a continual learning. Have you got a quick tip that you could share with us on that, something you've observed, that something that you've learned?
Yeah. If you want to learn how to show versus tell, if you think you understand the concept, don't try to fix it in your writing until you can fix it in a lot of other people's writing first. Because when I put my writing down and learn to look at other people's writing, it's easier to be more critical of stuff that you're reading for the first time. And so put your stuff down, because I call it subconscious camouflage. Our mind camouflages things, and we just can't do it. And so until you train and develop that skill to the point of which you can see it easily, then it's going to be hard for you to find your own writing. So what I did is I was just working as an agent, looking at tons and tons of submissions, and then all of a sudden you just see it everywhere. And you're like, oh, now it makes sense. And then I went back to my writing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing it here and here and here. But I still, some of that camouflage, subconscious camouflage still happens, and I miss it every once in a while in my own writing. But I can find it in other people's writing, with ease. So I would say get in a critique group. Ask people to give them a free editor critique of their work, just so you have opportunities to see what it looks like. Even when I pick up a novel off the shelf, like I was reading this novel the other day, it's a General Market novel, and like first page he's telling,
oh wow.
When you're super famous, you can get away with it, but you don't get away with it as much when you're trying to break into the industry. So you need to be really good. But when you notice it in a book, mark it, think about it, how could you change it? And then go back to yours once you get good at finding it. And it takes some time. It took me a while before I really got it. But now I get it. And
I think, like you said, reading, when we see a great paragraph that shows and not tells, you know what I mean? To study that as a writer, because I think that will sharpen our skills. I love the subconscious camouflage. That's a great image. Great image.
There's times when it's appropriate to tell, and you have to know when those times are too. So we really harp on show don't tell, and that's so important, and that's what you need to do. But then you've got to go back, take another step back, and say, okay, when is it appropriate to tell? Because you can't show everything, or the book would be thousands of pages long. So you've got to learn that. I think one of the best ways is avoid helping verbs as much as possible, and make sure your strong nouns, active verbs go a long way towards showing.
That's another lingo people got to learn, because active versus passive. What do you mean write active? I'm writing active. I'm actively writing. So that's another hard one for people. Active versus passive. What do they mean? What do they really mean? How do they find them? And it's more than just a Word document. Search and finding out how many passive sentences you have, but you're actually understanding it and fixing it, and is really part of what learning the lingo is about.
Do you find that some of the software like Grammarly or any of that really make a difference? Or
I do believe the software is getting better and better. Hemingway, Grammarly, a lot of those, they're good softwares. They're not 100% perfect, but they're better than nothing. So if you don't really understand it, stick it through one of those services and allow yourself to have the best opportunity to put out your best work, especially if you want to go self-publish route. If you're self-publishing, you're not paying an editor. I mean, the people that I know that I consider to be self-published authors, they're paying editors to edit their book, and they're not paying $30. They're paying $1,000. They're paying $3,000, and they're spending the same amount of money on their covers that a traditional publisher would spend. $200, $300, $500, $700, $1,000 for covers. Those are the people that are they're investing in their self-publishing career because they're taking it seriously. And so to me, when you really take self-publishing seriously and you're trying to compete with publishing houses, that's when you can establish yourself as a self-published author, because you get it and you're treating it as such. And so in a lot of these things, if you aren't doing them, it's what can separate the difference between being a writer and an author, because an author goes to the next level with their own writing.
I've learned the trick on self-publishing. It's not just one editor. You know, you could use, you know, so, and that's where sometimes the cost goes up. I may not be spending $1,000, but I'll spend $200 here and $300 here and have it edited by 2 different sets of eyes besides a reading group or a critique group, you know, and that just only improves it and improves your own writing.
You learn more from the editing than you do, I think, from the writing. And people are like, how do you learn to write? Well, mostly it's by being edited. People tell me what I did wrong.
That is true.
We've got about, I think, I'm really trying to be cautious of Kyle's time. I want you guys to know he's agenting and then doing these businesses. So most nights he is working, like, he is around the clock worker all the time. Clients. He's amazing. So I want to make sure we have enough time to just go real quick through pros and cons of traditional and self-publishing, because I think sometimes people view like, oh, traditional is better and self is not. And this is something that I hear from people at conferences, and it's like, it's really not. You have to decide for your marketing and your book what the best route is for that. And sometimes it's self or indie, and sometimes it's traditional. And there's pros and cons to both. And there's really no like better, it's just different. So can we jump into that real quick, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, Matthew's got a question here. It's probably a good place to start. You know, what is the difference between the two? He's wondering about whether having self-published books can be a hindrance or a help. Yes. The answer is yes, Matthew. If you have self-published books and they haven't sold, it's a hindrance. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. As an agent, if you send me 10 books and you sold 10 copies total, you're probably not going to get traditionally published because you're not that invested in making your books work on your own. And so I had someone the other day at a conference pitch me a 4-book series. It's done. It sounded neat. And they told me they sold 4 copies. There's nothing I can do with that because I got to tell the publisher. And the publisher, all they got to do is they got to go to this website called Nielsen Book Scan. They type it in, and it tells them how many books you sold. And that's all they need to know. And if they come back and they say 4 books, and I have this conversation all the time because I do have a lot of clients who are first-time authors, and so, or unpublished, and you know, I get this: the platform's not big enough. What are the book sales? And if the book sales come back low, I do get no's quite often. I would say 80-90% of the time I get a no if the book sales are low. I can't give you a category number, like categorically give you a number of what that would be, because it's different between each publisher. Some publishers in the Christian market would be fine. If you sold 5,000 copies on your own, that would be impressive to them, very impressive. If you were in the general market, you sold 5,000 on your own, it's kind of they probably want to see 50,000. So you got to just kind of look at what market you're in, what company you're trying to work with. You know, if you're working with a smaller traditional publisher, you don't necessarily need as big of sales because they can make those numbers work. But if you're working with a Penguin Random House, you're going to have high numbers of sales. You know, and we'll look at the book, the Shack. They had 1 million sales on that book before it got published at a publishing house, and it got a huge contract when it got published. So that was all done as a self-published book, and then it got picked up. So, you know, if you get 1 million sales, I can sell you. If you have 1 million sales, I'll get you a contract ASAP. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a both and so I'll give you a practical example. I have a client now who called me earlier in the year, a great guy. He had already sold 1,000 books by the time he called me, and he was moving, I don't know, 20, 30 copies a day. I could have signed him and tried to get in on that, you know, financially. And I just told him, you know, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Call me when you have something else. And so he called me back when he has, I think, 2,800 copies have sold. And, you know, I pitched that to a publisher, and that's attractive to a publisher because it's a smaller traditional publisher, but they would like to get in kind of the game with him and try to develop a series around that product. And so that's great for them because that would be a good selling book for them if they could have the same kind of success. So that is an attractive number for them, but that's not going to be the same for every company. And that would be a Christian house, so their numbers they'd be looking for would be a little smaller.
Okay, so what about pros and cons for self-publishing and traditional publishing? Let's start with the cons of traditional publishing because I think we talk so much about the good stuff about it. Like, let's talk about some of the harder things about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to know what the pros are for traditional publishing. You're a bookstore, you can, all that stuff. The cons are you don't make a lot of money. So that's the biggest fallacy in the industry is that traditionally published authors are rich and don't have to work and all that. Most of my friends who are publisher and a lot of my clients who are who are traditionally published, they work day jobs or they work really, really hard because they have to keep putting out new products because a book can have a 6-month shelf life a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And I think publishers are now realizing with Amazon that books can have a lot longer shelf life on Amazon. So that's been nice. But the cons are you won't make as much money as if you can sell the same number of books in a self-published market. The pro is you can sell a lot more books because you have a lot more exposure, but there's a balance. But the cons are you lose control. Some traditional publishers, you lose rights. It's not your work. It belongs to the publishing house as long as it's under contract. So you can essentially plagiarize your own work. And so there's some of the negatives there. I would say those are the biggest negatives to me. And the delay in time. I mean, if you're going to go traditionally published, you're going to essentially do 1, maybe 2 books a year with a house. And that's it. And that's a lot of work. And if you're only making, if you make $10,000 a book to $30,000 a book, you really can't make a living at 1 book a year on that. And that's why a lot of them have that, the cons there. And that's why some people are going what we call hybrid, where they go and publish self-publishing because they're trying to get more books out to have more opportunities. So,
how do you plagiarize? Oh, I'm sorry, Bet.
No, go ahead.
How do you plagiarize yourself?
Because the publisher owns the book and the content. So if you were to put your work without quoting yourself in it, you would essentially plagiarize yourself. I have this author right now. They have to footnote all the stuff that they quote from their other book because they don't own it. The publisher owns it until the contract expires. So,
oh wow!
Usually, your contract will allow you to have a certain number of. I think she's allowed to use 500 words without footnoting it, but after that, she has to. So it's just there's different ways contract, but you have to know those, or you can really have some issues there.
Never thought about that before. It's interesting.
And I'll give you some. There's a lot of cons to the self-publish. I've got about a minute, so there's a lot of cons to the self-publish. I think people know what the cons are. You got to do everything yourself. You don't have any marketing or advertising support or help, so you don't sell a lot. But there are some pros. The pros are you're going to be in control, but if you can move a lot of books, you can make a lot of money. Whereas in a traditional sense, you might make $1 a book, and in like children's publishing, you might make 10 or 20 cents a book. And in the self-published world, you can make 70% of all sales, and depending on the price range you're selling the book in, which means on a $10 book you can make $7. So you have to move a lot less books to make the same amount of money. And right now there's a lot of authors that are making $100,000 a year plus who are self-published because they're moving a lot of books. Not what they'd move if they were traditionally published, but doesn't matter to them because they're making more than all their traditionally published friends. It's a balance of profitability plus the number of books sold.
Callie had a question for you, Kyle, real quick. Do publishers usually give their notes pretty quickly?
No, never.
I said not fast enough for me.
It's taken 16 months for one publisher, 13 months for another. I do have some publishers now, and that's why there's a manager working agent. I've been able to tell some publishers, just tell me quick no's. So some of them will give me like a 5-minute no or a 1-month no or a 3-month no. But that's rare. That's not the norm. Because it's another lingo thing. Get in a slush pile, which means sit there and wait for them to have time to go through your emails. And I know one editor who goes like alphabetically. So like if you're a Cyle Young at the end, she may never get to you. So
Johnny lucks out with Alexander, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
On that. Bethany, do you want to wrap up and let him escape?
Yeah, he's got to go. So if you guys have questions, please go ahead and get them in the chat because I will get them to Kyle. So that, we'll be able to answer them. And also the trade secrets and best practices class is $10 for a few more days. We will be able to add to that class. So if you're going through it and there's things you want us to talk about in there, we would love that feedback and suggestions. So I don't know, Kyle, anything else you want to say before jumping off? We'll let you go.
I think all publishing can be good if you have a plan. I saw that in the comments. You have to have a business plan. It's a business. If it's just a hobby, you can put your book out there. But if you want to be a hobby person, you're a hobby writer. I don't really think there is such thing as a hobby author. I think an author is a business and it needs to have a business plan. And I like what Catherine says there. She's all about the business plan. You need to have a business plan, and you need to spend 60% of your time on the business, the marketing side, and 40% on the writing. or less nowadays. And so that's the key thing.
Wow.
Maybe even 70-30. So.
Yeah. Cyle, this has been fascinating, and we're going to keep recording just for you guys to know for a little bit, because we have Bethany talk a little bit more about your business and some of the opportunities, and kind of put the links and talk about the conference coming up too. So we look forward to seeing you there. This has been great. Thank you for spending time with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I got another meeting I got to run to, but it's been fun.
Thank you, Cyle.
Thanks for coming on.
Come back again. Please come back again.
Thanks.
Let him come out there. And Bethany,
Bye.
this whole idea about this seriouswriter.com, I'm going to act like I don't know anything. Okay.
Okay.
So you have started a business with Cyle called Serious Writer
Inc.
Yes. Inc. That's the umbrella.
We are incorporated, yes.
Okay, and under this umbrella, you're offering a variety of services to help us grow as writers. Can you kind of give us kind of the major buckets that would be?
Yes. So Cyle was kind of already doing his own thing with Almost an Author, and then I was doing Serious Writer. And so what we saw was it would be better to join forces here because we have the same goal. And I mean, I'm not a best-selling author. Kyle's not either, but we're both award-winning. We both, were finalists at the same conference together. And then he started agenting, and I started going more into the marketing stuff, like with my graduate program that I'm in. And so, but we go to a lot of conferences and we do a lot of appointments with people. And so I was hearing the same kind of things, and he was too. And I just, both of us really want to help, like new writers break into this industry, but do it very well. So Serious Writer Inc., our tagline is bold, period, better, period. Like we don't want to sugarcoat things. We don't want to say take the easy way. We want to say in the industry, not just in Christian publishing, but even looking at general, because sometimes they do things better. What is the best way for you to navigate this publishing road? Because it's so subjective. And so that's what we're trying to do, is bring in contacts from the Christian Writers Conferences, because we've networked there. We know people there. They're going to be teaching conferences. But we're also reaching out and branching out beyond that to people who may not be like best-selling enough to come teach at a writers conference, but are experts in their industries or have created their own businesses that don't have platforms for courses. So those are the people who are going to be coming into Serious Writer Academy. So Serious Writer Inc. is our umbrella company that we co-own. And then seriouswriter.com, I believe, is still a landing page where we're collecting emails. There's a lot of back-end work that's happening. And we're kind of waiting on that one as we're launching Serious Writer Academy, which has been in beta for 2 years. So for my beta members, I love you. You know this. I love you so much. And so as part of that, the big launch is happening on 10/2, October 2nd, and we have several classes that are going to be in there. And then a lot of them that are coming out, we're going to be dripping with the content so that you're not going to be overwhelmed with a bunch of classes, but then there's going to be a whole lot of options. We have self-publishing classes being taught by people who own indie publishing companies. They're going to talk about how to do this and what you need to do. We're going to cover the entire gamut. So that's why we offered the 21 Trade Secrets and Best Practices course. We're offering it for $10 until the 15th. And like I said, that's a course we'll be able to grow as people give us feedback in that class. So for those of you who are already in, thanks. We're going to be sending out emails. We want to know how we can make it even better. Oh, Vicki, thank you so much.
Yes.
That's our why, is so that we can help writers do the very best, whichever direction they decide to go, which is why we wanted to talk about self and traditional here, since he's an agent, and I'm traditionally published thus far. We want to make sure that everyone knows this is for both.
The Serious Writer Academy will be online courses. Correct? Yeah. Okay. I don't know if we made that clear. And then be courses that they would purchase, and then they could take at their own speed, correct? And then they could choose one or choose multiple ones.
Yes. So inside of our back end, you'll have your own library. So if you take our offer for the $10 course that we're offering right now, you're in. And so then you'll take the class. We're giving lifetime access to that class, so you can take it at your leisure. All the modules are going to be between like 5 and 10 minutes, depending on where natural breaking points are. And each instructor will be different, though. The people we have teaching, they may have a lifetime opportunity for that class, or they may it may be a situation where they only want to offer it for a year, and you'll have access for a whole year to it. But you'll know that, like, when you get it, we'll make sure that.
It might depend on the topic, because some things get dated after a while, so you would want a new one after a while.
Yeah.
Facebook would be an example of that because it's always changing. If you had a course on using the best use of Facebook, I tell you, that would almost have to be a yearly with all the changes.
Yeah. And the nice thing about these classes too is we're pricing them super, super reasonable. Now, I take a lot of courses by people, you know, and sometimes you spend a couple $1,000s for these mega courses, and that's, you know, that's just what you do. So we're pricing these at $29 and $49 to start. And I think what's going to happen, I'm not speaking for any instructor besides myself because I know I'll be doing this, but I think the best time to get into these courses are when they're first offered, because that's going to be the lowest price for you. And then if they add PDFs or add content, or if we add an extra module, you have access to that. You're not paying for it later. You're getting in. So that's why we want to tell people, this is going to be your best. This is the best time for these things. And these are, a lot of them are workshops that are taught at writers conferences, because another vision, I don't know if vision's the right word, but I wanted people to be able to have a writers conference experience when they couldn't go, because the writers conference changed my life. And so that's kind of where the Academy's heart is. And at some point, I'll say this on record because I have said this for 3 years, at some point what we want to have is a model where people can pitch online as well. And so that's a very slow, like, editors do not want to do this. Like, we have factual evidence that they do not want to do this, but I think that time will come. And so, you know, as people switch to those kinds of things, that might be something that we'll offer to Academy members. So
that sounds great. And then talk about conference. You have a conference, an in-person conference.
Yes, we have lots of things happening for 2018. So, but our first conference is the Ohio Christian Writers Conference, November 2nd through the 4th. There's a lot of people up in that area who, actually the majority of people who are going to the Ohio conference live up there, which is great because so many conferences seem to be like 10 South, where we have been. So it's going to be a lot of new faces for me anyway, so I'm very excited about that. And I don't know, I'm so excited about it. I've got so much on my mind, but we're having Bob Hostetler, who is amazing. The
He's
Bard
from the
in the
Cincinnati
Bible
area too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has won several awards for that. He's one of our keynoters. My best friend, she's been on here before, Michelle Medlock Adams. She's also continuing to win awards, not only in children's, but also women's nonfiction. So she covers multiple categories, and she sold almost 4 million copies of her books. Wow. So she's incredible. And she's going to be doing a keynote and teaching course workshops. So is Bob. And then Edie Melson, who you guys know is wonderful with social media. And she also is nonfiction author as well. She's in Cracker Barrel. She's doing so many great things. And she's our third keynoter. And we're doing them TED Talk style. So this is going to be a conference. It's going to have a lot of familiar roots to what you're used to if you've come to a writers conference before. But then we're going to have a lot of different things. Like our keynotes are 18 minutes. 18 to 20 minutes each. You're going to get like a super TED Talk dose of awesome, and then go to these different workshops. And we're very excited.
I think it's exciting. The website, I think, Vicki, maybe you've got that. I think it's just the initials. You might want to put that in the chat if somebody's listening today or watching the replay and want to sign up for the conference or the Academy. We'll have those in the chat on that way. Okay. Is there another bucket under that umbrella that you can share with us, or did we cover it all?
Oh, there's lots of buckets. We have lots of buckets. So Writer's Chat is actually a bucket underneath Serious Writer Inc. We've partnered together. So that's one reason why we're going a little bit more, trying to get the recordings into an easier format for the replay viewers. With the conference and Academy, Writer's Chat is high on our list, but it's one of the next things to do. So you'll see some changes coming in the next couple of months. But what we want to do is kind of be everywhere. We've got this great marketing strategy that's sort of like starting to slowly roll out. And, podcasting is really big. And so we want to be able to use these and have them in the audio format so they can go into podcast format. So we can kind of be everywhere. And then Almost an Author is the other half. So we have Serious Writer, Almost an Author. That's what merged together for Serious Writer Incorporated. And so Serious Writer Academy is a little bit more serious. It's going to be fun, but it's like we're going to be great instruction. And that Almost an Author is more of our, if you're new to this industry, especially, like we want to give you publishing opportunities so that you can start building your publication credits. We'll have different opportunities for people to post for us. It's going to be it's super fun. Like, and we're working on that too as we roll out Serious Writer Academy. And Cyle Young, who is in here, she handles almost an author. She's amazing. And then genre chat is something that she's been doing where she's interviewing these amazing authors. My mom is also, we've sort of pulled in her novelist Unwind. So our umbrella is very big. And she's doing inspirational fiction authors on her own. And yet partnering with her, we'll be able to start getting that marketing out too. And then we have a lot of things that we really can't like say yet on the, you know what I mean, on the record, because they're kind of like, we're still moving pieces through, but there's a lot coming, like international conferences that's on our list. It might be 2019 before that actually happens, but we were talking about the other night. Lots of things.
Do you have any idea where conferences are going to be if they're not around Ohio, where they might be located next year yet? Or can you say that yet? You might, okay, you can't say yet. All right.
If Kyle was here, I could look at his face and know if I could say that, but he's not here, so I don't know.
Okay. But next year, you're planning to do some conferences in other locations, other states.
We want to start. We're gonna start our tour, and it's gonna be.
They want Winnipeg.
The concept.
They want Winnipeg and Nashville is already being suggested.
Well, if you're in Tennessee, I do recommend the Mid-South Christian Writers Conference in Memphis because that's happening in March.
Yes, thank you.
So we're trying to be very careful about where we're going because we want to partner with conferences that are already in place because they already have established clientele. So we're trying to be very careful about that. But we have a location that I can't shut up about. And once we can say it, then I'll be very excited about the 2018.
Okay.
New conference.
Yeah, well, keep us posted. And because we use the writers chat to because we have a lot of writers watch this on replay or live, you know that. So we want to get it out because we have people from all across the United States, Rhode Island, to Florida, all over there, and West and Canada. Yeah.
Canada's on my list. And email marketing is really big. We've talked about that in here before. And so we reward our email list people, so they will go first. Everything that happens first will go there. So please, seriousswriter.com is the best way to get on that list. Canada is big. I really want to go to PEI. That's my dream. But yes. So we have lots of, so Matt's in Canada. Vicki has contacts in Canada. I also have close connections with somebody in Canada, and I don't know, Canada's layout, so I'm not sure where everybody is at on a map. But if we can find a central location, we could do like a really big one and maybe do two. I don't know. But Canada's on the list, as is Australia.
That sounds great. Anything else you want to share about Serious Writer? And then we can invite people in for questions. I can go off the record, we'll probably go off the record.
Yeah, let's do that.
On that, do you have any concluding things that you want to say about Serious Writer?
Yes.
I figured you did.
The final thing is we have a lot of big dreams and a lot of big ideas on how we want this to go. But also it doesn't matter really what we want to talk about. It really matters what do writers need to know and need to talk about. And so that we are, for those of you going through the $10 course, like it's only $10 for another few days. And that course is an hour. It's over an hour course. That price will jump on that, especially as we add to it. So this is like pretty much a steal. I'm glad Sherilyn likes it. But if you're going through it, we want feedback on the questions that you have so we can make sure to cover some of those like tips and things. And then the code is friends and family. And I think the link is in the chat. Vicki was really awesome about that. I also want to say thank you publicly to Vicki and Cody and Sherilyn and Jill because the behind the scenes work on this is immense, like as you can probably understand. And then coordinating a conference, a brand new conference, and merging two companies. There are so many moving pieces that they're amazing. So Kyle and I cannot say enough about the people who have joined this team. They're amazing.
Well, thank you for the update today. This has been great. And it was great. I'm so glad you were able to get Kyle in here for a little bit to get us caught up too. So really glad you guys, especially though you're watching the replay, were able to join us today. Johnny, do you know for sure what we're doing next week?
99% sure. I believe we're going to be joined again by Tracy Crump. Tracy, as some of you may remember, has been with us before, and she is phenomenal about getting her, getting her stories published in Chicken Soup for the Soul edition. So she does do workshops on that. I believe she's doing a class for Serious Writer Academy. Am I right, Beth?
Yes.
Yes. on, you know,
Writing.
on, you know, how to improve your chances of getting published. So she's, we just have to, you know, we've been emailing, but I'm like I said, 99% sure that she's going to be our guest next week. And it's great. And even if you're not interested in writing for Chicken Soup for the Soul, there will be good tips for writing short nonfiction pieces in a story format, which can be very helpful for your nonfiction writing or for other, just any other publications that you might be interested in. That's kind of the format they're going to want. So be here next week for Tracy.
That'll be great. Great. Bethany?
I have one more thing.
Yep.
So we, on the Serious Writer Facebook page, which I'm pretty sure is facebook.com/serious, it might be _writer. I think someone took Serious Writer together before I got it. But we are doing a giveaway, and we are going to be setting that up pretty soon. And we are giving away an iPad as part of our big launch. And then Tracy, actually, that's what reminded me. She is offering as one of the prizes to critique your work if you're looking to submit for Chicken Soup for the Soul. She's been published so many times, she knows the formula. And so that's, she's giving a free thing for that. And I know that Jill, who's in here as well, who does amazing with Instagram, she's offering a consultation to help you like personally with that. So we've got some really great prizes besides the iPad giveaway. So, but that information will go to our email list and then on the Facebook page. And you know how hard it is to do Facebook pages. So I would appreciate your little click of a like. SeriousWriter.com is where we're still collecting emails on that page. So that site is looks different on the back end than what you guys can see right now. It's just a landing page for emails. And then there's also a place for emails on Serious Writer Academy. So those are separate. We don't want to bombard the SeriousWriter.com list about the Academy. So if you want to know when new courses are coming out or have ideas on that, be sure to sign up in both places because we are segmenting those lists.
Okay. Great, great. And we could always, if they have questions, they can always put it on the writer's chat.
Yeah.
A Facebook page to get, and Bethany will help monitor that, and then she can help you if you get confused at all on what all, because this is major announcements, I think, and major opportunities for us. And yes, SeriousWriter.com. Yep. So we got
Serious Writer Academy.
Okay. Thank you for being with us today, everybody, and watching on the replay. And we're so glad to do that. And we're going to end the recording here now, and then we'll invite our friends back in for after the party. So if you miss us live, this is an incentive to come join us live each week because we do some chatting afterwards and sometimes share some things that we won't say on the recording. So the secret sauce. But anyway, we have fun doing that. And we're so glad. And next week we'll learn about, hopefully we'll have Tracy here for Chicken Soup of the Soul writing tips. And like Johnny said, that'll help us as writers all together. So thank you for being with us today.